And Kendrick, stand ready. How's it going?
It's going pretty freaking well. We are prepared for another week of HGC China. Three whole days of series to bring you.
It is so exciting, and I know we keep repeating ourselves here. I know we keep telling you this, guys, but today is probably one of the finest days you could possibly imagine when thinking of China, because we have a packed schedule, especially if you consider how the balance of power has changed over in China, with Beyond the Game, also known as BTG, now dominating the league from start to finish. They show us an almost immaculate performance, and they're going to be playing twice, and guess against who, Tetcher?
They're going to be playing against two of the top teams in the league, with their first game and the first game of the day being against their old rivals, TheOne. And then they have the gauntlet to throw down again. It is super perfect team.
Absolutely amazing. If you guys haven't told all of your friends who are playing the game, or who aren't even playing the game, who are just about to get started, just get them in here, collect them all, because you're about to witness some epic HGC China gameplay. And if there's one thing that China has been kind of known for, it is nonstop action. It is brawling, team fighting, not always the most competitive way to play the game by any means, but certainly the most entertaining way to do this. So can't wait to show what Beyond the Game have in store for us. But we're going to take a look at the table, at the current standings, and we see them there reigning currently all by themselves at the very top of the table, sitting at 12 points. Being chased, though, by SBT already.
Yeah. And the fact is, I'm looking back through now, and I'm about to go into last year, but this year, no team has matched the feat that BTG have done in being undefeated coming out of week number 1 in terms of maps. Not just series, maps. BTG haven't dropped anything yet.
Quite the opposite, actually, is true, right, Tetcher? When they faced CE, one of the what we thought would be one of the strongest teams in the league, as per usual. CE, not really a slouch team by any means. They dominated them. Twice in a row did they have a perfect game against them. No kill was taken by CE. No structure was destroyed. And Beyond the Game, I know we said this about TheOne last phase, right? But I really, truly, honestly believe that this time around, if Beyond the Game keep up that consistency, and if they don't have any issues with Visa at BlizzCon, should they actually qualify there, they could be the one team maybe to finally redeem the honor of China at an international tournament.
They can certainly try, and I'm still going back in time, seeing if anyone has been able to achieve the feat that they have. And yeah, even E-Star went 1-1 on day number 1 versus CE back when they were still a team.
Man.
SBT went 1-1 versus Host Lady. That was an interesting week. That was a very interesting week. All right, I'm about to hit the start of 2017. Did anyone rescue us? Nope, even back then. So yeah, in 2 years, no one has achieved what Beyond the Game have done, going undefeated in the first week of HGC China.
And if you add up all the games played here, you can see it from left to right, by the way. You see victories, losses, and draws. If you combine all those games, they're even one game down to SBT and TheOne who are currently chasing them down, right? So they have one additional series to play, and if they were to win that one, their lead would expand even further. But I know BTG is good, and I know they haven't dropped a single map yet, but their opponents are no slouch either. We see TheOne and SBT here on the table, the two strongest teams besides Beyond the Game currently, I would say. Then, for the second half of the broadcast, we see TheOne actually play yet another series. Team Nut also in the mix twice today. Pretty cool to see that. And our final game could also be a very, very interesting one, Tetcher. CE versus RPG.
Both teams looking very inconsistent, both struggling in the middle of the table, with RPG a little bit ahead of CE by a single point. So obviously CE would quite like to get that 2-0 and overtake RPG in the table and get themselves back into that top 2 contention to go to BlizzCon.
Yep.
But right now, RPG are nipping at the heels of those front runners. And then, of course, we're going to have the battle of the bottom of the table, actually, as our second series of the day. Team Nut versus KT. Can Team Nut finally get a point on the board? This is where we will find out.
And it would definitely be the team for them to try it against, because KT is looking far from being unbeatable this season. But let's focus on those guys who are indeed yet unbeaten. It is Beyond the Game, being beyond of all the other teams in the league currently. Facing those gentlemen, though, TheOne with Hugo, Keshi, the newest addition here replacing Muggle up to this point, Meng, ZJZ, and Huhua. You can never count those guys out. They were actually the ones dominating last phase up to the playoffs, where they were taken down by SBT in that very last best of 5. The question, I think TheOne, Tetcher, it's safe to say, is the big question mark to me. Sure, they have played okay. Sure, they have won most of their games. But is it really the one that we were used to seeing last phase?
An excellent question. I mean, if we look at last phase, these two teams did not play each other in the playoffs due to the fact that TheOne were in first seed and BTG didn't even make it to made it to the Eastern Clash, but didn't make it any further. Here you can see the highlighted players: Dancing, Ranged Assassin, Hanzo Master, and Hugo. Also, Dancing apparently second in terms of KDA in the entire league. So cool to see that.
Yeah, that is really nice to see indeed. Of course, as we said, we are still not 100% sure how these KDAs are being measured. We're trying to get a hold of production from China so they can maybe update us with that piece of information. For now, though, look at that, Tetra. This series is about to go fiery. We're going to Volskaya Foundries, a quite unusual pick for Chinese teams to pick as game number 2, but it was picked by Beyond the Game. So not only are they scary to play against, but also their drafting in terms of map choices is very unpredictable sometimes.
That it is, but getting it out the way now can make a lot of sense. Being able to play around that is pretty effective. Also, it looks like we immediately do have that KDA. Maybe they were listening to us. Yet, BTG, they hold all top 5 spots.
Druid actually, their support player, is currently ranked number 1, numero uno in the league, followed by Dancing, as we just saw. Then the tank player 619 and LLK and Lockter are following right after. So the entire team of BTG is dominating the Chinese KDA scores.
Yeah, I mean, the rest sort of mixes up a bit after that. We get CE, SPT in there, then RPG start to sneak up as well. But that is a absolute dominance. It really shows the position that BTG find themselves in at the moment as they remove the White Mane and the Maya.
Yeah, Maya's still, one of those dominant heroes that, if left unchecked, can always win a game single-handedly, sometimes by herself. The same can be said about Genji, though, and if you are familiar with Meng on the bottom right of your screens, you can see that gentleman right there. He is an absolute menace on Genji if left uncontrolled.
But so is this one, Yorel coming out here for BTG, giving them that solo lane dominance. Lockdar, who's just joined as their solo laner, is playing very well, has picked up the role, considering he used to be a ranged assassin. He has picked up the role of solo laner and bruiser incredibly quickly, and Yorel has been a heavy lean for him in that.
Yeah, I think at this point it's safe to say that Yorel is by far his most pick hero. I mean, it's super cool to see that coming into play, though, because for the most part, Chinese top laners, solo laners, whatever you want to call them, they weren't really used to playing Yorel quite a bit. Compared to other regions in the world, it took quite a long time for Chinese teams to really, catch up on the strength of Yorel. And for Lockjar, who, as you said, used to be an expert at ranged assassin play, to pick her up so quickly is really cool to see. And it really shows how, I think, this hero is just so stable, like all around. Tankiness, self-sustained late game damage after level 16 of the damage talent. Super cool to see the priority on Yorel still.
The last 2 times these teams faced each other, it was the last time at least, it was a 1-1. The time before that, it was a 2-0 in favor of TheOne. As like we said, they had a very dominant start to the last season, and then they never played each other in the playoffs due to the aforementioned, oh dear, everything's exploding situation. And then they did actually, I believe, they were the teams who played against each other in the Eastern Clash, actually, where BTG, with a substitute, mind you, did beat out TheOne.
Which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Like we talked about this before the Eastern Clash started, and when it was about to start, Tetra, right, that we had such high hopes for TheOne at this tournament. We were saying that this is probably the only Chinese teams who could even hope to pose a little bit of a threat to the Korean teams. But it was quite the opposite. It turned out to be that TheOne were struggling from that offline disease that always seems to befall them. But yeah, let's see what they can do here against BTG, which is a little bit of a grudge match, a little bit of a revenge match when you mention it to the Eastern Clash that took place a couple of weeks ago.
Solid drafting coming in by TheOne, though. They've got a very solid Hugo hero. Great setup for that Reina here, of likely of Kieshi here. so they can get good slows with the Muradin and the Thrall to empower that ace in the hole, and then Genji for the finisher, so they've got that single target, they've got that disruption, they are very open, but here's the counter. Two heroes very focused on their melees once you actually get into a close range fight, and they counter that with LLK. No, okay, I was about to say that would be weird if LLK would play in the Cassia. Dancing, the more micro-heavy hero, swaps onto that, and LLK takes up the Sergeant Hammer.
All right, so that is looking pretty strong now on the side of BTG, Sergeant Hammer and Cassia. The Cassia always these days, even in China, more of a reactionary pick rather than just a staple go-to, right? Because you're like, Cassia's just so good. Used to be the case in China a few months ago, where they would just pick Cassia regardless, even into mages or heavy spell damage in general. But these days, you know, against Raynor, against Thrall, all that auto attack damage, she's just really, really solid. We saw a lot of Cassia coming in from DSL and RPG to great success. Let's see what Dancing can do in that hero as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, if you were just going by who was the meta at the time, it's kind of a no-brainer that Cassia should maybe be picked a little bit more, because the two main assassins at this point, back when we started seeing the Cassia being picked by DSL, were Raynor and Phoenix. Those were the two main, like, sustained damage dealers. And and then Cassia comes in and we're like, oh, that's unusual, which it is, because no one really picks it up. But when you look at it just statistically wise, it does make sense.
Yeah, and you raise a really solid point there, Tetcher. Mages in China, at least, have fallen out of favor. They've been falling out of favor for a long time. Very rarely do we see a Gul'dan, for example. Very rarely do we see a Kalthus making it into the mix. I think other regions in the world are a little bit more flexible when it comes to that.
We did see a Kalthus this weekend, for example. I think we might have seen more than one, in fact. But either way, it is cool to see as we're heading into the first map of the day. And it is going to be on the left-hand side in the blue trunks beyond the game with 619, LLK, Druid, Dancing, and Loktar.
And facing them is none other than the one represented by Hugo, Keshi, Meng, ZJZ, and Huohua on the main tank on Muradin. All right, Muradin is one of his favorites, and we love to see him on that hero. He had a couple of questionable performances, though, simply due to the fact that he was oftentimes outdrafted. We remember that game last week when he had to face a Tychus. Can't remember the opponent, the opposing team on top of my head, but he was actually forced to pick the Haymaker because they had so much percentage damage, it was not even worth it to go for the Avatar, because that would have been melted just as quickly. In the Haymaker game, Tetcher, we remember that didn't necessarily go so well, so let's see if Huohua especially gets a little bit of a better start here against BTG today.
Speaking of stars, let's do this. Upgraded Innovate coming in from Malfurion, Crash Lightning coming in from Thrall, a Thunderstroke coming in, the Thunder Fury coming in from LLK, who is, in fact, playing the Cassia with a little swap bait for us casters here. But they are going for LLK, the person usually playing the Alarak, for example, onto that Cassia, while Dancing, usually very good on that micro to dodge abilities with the Hanzo, is going to be playing the Sergeant Hammer, so I'm expecting some really solid siege tactics.
And that is the beauty of BTG's roster at the moment. They have very little weaknesses in which you're like, okay, this player, this assassin player can only play these kinds of heroes, like only mages, for example, and the other assassin is pretty much limited to those sustained auto attackers. No, and beyond the game, you have LLK and Dancing, two absolute experts in what they're doing. So no matter what the situation requires them to pick, they're probably going to be able to execute it. Same can be said about Druid. Such a flexible support player right now. He used to be a Malfurion one-trick last phase, but he has diversified his hero pool by such a large margin.
That he has. He is looking incredibly solid, but when we talk about diverse hero pools, we have to talk about LLK.
Absolutely.
He is, as we already mentioned, an Alarak player for the team sometimes. And this, I believe, I don't think it's his first Cassia, but it's definitely a rarer pick. But it shows he is one of those surprise factors for the team. But surprise-wise, Hugo's Thrall is very scary. I'm actually quite excited about the Crash Lightning because this is one of the maps you can use it on. And I think I prefer that against the Sergeant Hammer because it means you have good root. Very nice. But with the Crash Lightning, it means you're hitting Hammer more less consistently, but more bursty, which means you can follow up and set up for a Genji a lot more efficiently without giving Deca Kane time to react.
And the same can be said about the Cassia too, right? You want to hit her really hard with your ability damage. If you went for Echo of the Elements, sure, you could have probably had another instance of your Lightning, but it wouldn't hit as hard. It wouldn't be as efficient in the long run if you combine that with Thunderstorm at 16 as well. So basically, it's, as you said, it's a map-specific choice, one that I personally still find pretty okay. And it's also designed to, as you said, deal a little bit of extra damage onto Kasia and Sergeant Hammer respectively. Let's see how quickly he can actually stack that one up. Unfortunate bounces here to the minions, so no Crash Lightning stack to this point. Little 6 is almost there for both teams. Mercenaries have already been taken in the top lane. LK dropping low here a little bit.
He's surviving though, keeping everything together. We're seeing the Flash of Light, I believe, level 4 talent coming in for the Cassia. I'm positive I've got that name wrong. Burst of Light is what my mind is telling me.
It is the Inner Light.
Inner Light, that's the one. So either way, it is still, when she is stunned, gets the extra blind, which is going to be very effective against Muradin, and maybe against the Brawl if he goes for Sundering.
Absolutely. The more crowd control available by the enemy team, the more value Inner Light is going to give you. And if you look at it, there's a stun from Muradin, there's a root from Thrall coming in, a root from Alfirin, so lots of anti-CC punishment value here from LLK, especially when he's trying to go into a close combat scenario with Cassia, which is oftentimes the case because she's probably one of the shortest ranged attackers in the game. So definitely a safer option for him rather than going for the more usual Ring of the Leech.
Toss from Thrall onto her as
Easy
we do see BTG.
there.
Yeah, very easy. There was a little modicum of congestion coming in from the one, but instead they back up. They get the stacks for Thrall and then pull back. They're just going to have to defend against this Protector as effectively as they can as level 7 arrives for both teams.
Yeah, and you can't even say that the one was able to get any math value during this, right? While BTG was busy occupying the Protector zone. It was more like them just willingly giving up and already gearing up for the defenses here. They have a couple of heroes that can deal quite well with the Protector, namely Thrall and Raynor. The more consistent auto attack damage you've got in your team, the more consistently you can burst those things down. Meng escaping the fangs of BTG here without any problems whatsoever. But look at BTG, look at Beyond the Game and how well they're playing this with the Protector. They're trying to get as much ranged value from those abilities as possible without really losing too much health on the Protector for it to fall. Now, 5 seconds are left on the clock, so it's going to expire anyways. So now you need to make sure that you do not find yourself in a position where you're outnumbered and surrounded by enemy heroes. That's exactly what they do, and already a pretty nice lead in terms of structural value on the side of BTG. But still, if you look at the experience Tetra, the one was actually able to keep up a nice gap there as well. Or sorry, a nice even score.
Indeed, they're holding it together very effectively here, grabbing themselves another mercenary camp, preparing the turrets for the next objective, which will be in the top lane, as the usual system is middle, top, and then bot. Now then, BTG looking for an opportunity, see if they can catch someone out. But overall, this is a, once again, fairly slow start to the game. Very passive for the one, who are very committed to this late game stacking process of Thrall by the looks of it, at least for the time being.
And I think one of the major reasons why the one can't really seem to apply any pressure this early on in the map is because Meng on Genji, for the most part, was forced to do the solo laning. And as good as Genji is as a hero right now, he's not necessarily the strongest solo laner, especially not when facing an Irel who can normally just out-pummel, out-sustain, and outrange him as well because of their gap-closing abilities. So with Thrall being forced to stay in the 4-man rotation because of his Crash Lightning, I don't think Meng really had any effect on the game at all. And it's not even his fault, it's more like the drafting fault. However, now that the game is going to open up more and more, now that some of the towers have already been destroyed, I really hope, for the one's sake, that Genji is going to be part of more of those early team fights.
As to why, that would be nice to see, especially now that he has X-Strike, so he is that execution tool that they do need. He's definitely going to be part of a very short team fight as Locktar just jumps on his head, using that Avenging Wrath, but he's just using it as a quicker rotation to the bot lane as he cleans up the minions.
Yeah, can't really touch the Irel. I mean, Genji's damage is nice and all. He's got good pokes, safe range as well, but the self-sustain, the healing coming in from Irel proves to be just too much. He doesn't even have to break too much into her mana account here. Look at that beautiful deflection onto Huofu for the time being. Takes a little bit of damage now, though, Locktar that is, but should still have enough mana left to heal himself up. BFG, by the way, coming in for Beyond the Game, so more burst damage in those team fights from Sergeant Hammer. Cassie still waiting, Tetra.
She is holding it for a really long time. I mean, let's talk about the one that I'm sure all like to see. That is the Valkyrie. Targets for that. Malfurion, incredibly vulnerable. Reyna as well. Could also be a good kill if they can pull him in effectively. So, and even Thrall, if they can keep him crowd controlled, pull him into the Garrosh.
Valkyrie into
They
taunt.
have a that Valkyrie into Wrecking Ball Q taunt. They have a huge stun train there if they're able to execute it effectively.
Can they do that, though? That's the question. In terms of items that are currently distributed to the teams, I think Beyond the Game is still ahead slightly. They do have that healing pulse, which is very important during those longer objective fights, of course. A couple of Crash Lightning stacks coming in here for Hugo. Not really sure on how many he's currently sitting at, but we definitely know that it's not currently fully stacked yet. Otherwise, we would have received a warning on the left-hand side of the monitor. Let's see, Sundering coming in here by Hugo as well, which is interesting. So they do not go for the Earthquake Rainer value, because Ace in the Hole at level 1 benefits from AoE slowing quite tremendously, but they go for the interrupting, splitting potential that a Sundering has, especially when used while flanking.
It's a lot of fight control. Can give you some very good value against the Sergeant Hammer, for example, if you're able to lock her down and time it against the siege tactics. So the value is there. It's all about the execution on that Sundering, of course. You want to make sure you get the right targets. Cassia still holding. She's about to hit level 30.
That's so interesting. But look at the kill score as well, Tetra. This is probably one of the more passive games that we have witnessed in China, especially if you consider the fact that TheOne, they like their aggression. They still like to be the playmakers rather than the ones who are just, you know, reacting 24/7. But unfortunately for them, that is exactly what's happening right now. Loktar is just double soaking without breaking much of a sweat. Look at that. He's even deflecting the ganking attempt by Huoho on the Murden. So he's getting his team tons of value and experience while they are just taking another map objective just like that.
This is a very interesting game. It's definitely not as high octane as some of the other games we have usually at HGC China, but this is the point. This shows that BTG are willing to play a different style than TheOne. They don't really know how to deal with this. They want to soak, they want to try and get Thrall fully stacked, they want to play for the late game, but they are just very slowly being whittled down. This is a poisoned dagger as opposed to an executioner's axe.
Oh, for sure. That death, or at least the damage that is being dealt by Beyond the Game, comes very slowly and very methodically. As you said, it's not the standard Chinese style to just win and brute force your way through a team fight and then capitalize on that. No, it's actually more of an international, European, Korean way of playing the game, right? You just take objective after objective. You're playing extremely safe. Look at how well they're actually managing the health on that Protector as well. Barely touched yet. They were able to get 3 forts out of this Tetra. 3 forts for nothing.
Indeed, they do. They're even just going to abandon the Protector early just so they can get mounted up and get the movement going and maybe prepare for another healing pulse. But TheOne, they have bowed their time here. Here comes the ball lightning, finally picked up by Cassia. She gets the toss, looking for Huoho, diving forward for the quick route from Malfurion, shuts down the engage.
Look at that, though. 3 turrets currently in possession of TheOne. If they are willing to fight for this, they can certainly do so with the help of a couple of neutral objectives here. They're getting pushed back by that Sergeant Hammer. They can't even seem to pressure it, and they give up the healing pulse now. Talking of items and upgrades, right? There's 2 healing pulses and a turret now for Beyond the Game. Both teams almost completely stacked on items.
Yeah, 3 turrets for TheOne, 2 turrets and 2 healing pulses for BTG with 14 seconds until their turret respawns, so they can actually kit everyone out here. Garrosh even in position to maybe start that Cassia on the way down to help. As TheOne, they move in for their 4th turret of the game. I get the feeling the next objective might be very action-packed.
Things are about to erupt very shortly here, guys, because at some point, if all of your members in your team are stacked or equipped with an item, there's nothing left for you to gain, actually. So you will have to use those at some point, either defensively or aggressively, if you want to make a play or defend against one. Now, 16 is not here yet for TheOne, so they need to be in their tippy toes, not to fall victim to an aggressive play here by BTG. And look at that. They're trying to set up exactly that. Sergeant Hammer is going to bring herself into position, and then they're going to try to take down that tower wall on the bottom.
Push in aggressively, trying to get as much value as possible. Loktar holding it together pretty well right now, eating the shots, but Deckard with very solid heals. and he's even applying armor to the rest of the team in case the one
Easy.
decide any kind of counter engage. But like you said, easy. Even going to get the root. Oh, that's just out of range for Hugo. Locktar tries to dive in, but once again, denied by the Malfurion root. ZJZ has been putting on quite the clinic here. Muradin jumps in, tossed out, and this is already a disengage.
Huho says it's enough. I've had enough of your sieging shenanigans. We're trying to make something happen. But as you said, the Avatar actually not getting most of its value here. Garrosh being dropped extremely low.
The healing pulse, though, all keeps him alive for so long, and that gives time for Cassia to do the work. Muradin the Garrosh the first to fall. Down goes Genji, looking for more. Lockdown low. BMG just short of killing ZJZ. Cassia turns it round. You can see Genji just gets completely isolated and taken out. 3-for-1 in favor of BTG.
And from his grave, Garrosh just unleashing a Locktar Ogar because he was the worthy sacrifice, the sacrifice that Beyond the Game was looking for. They were able to make it a 3-for-1 trade in favor for them. And you know, the icing on the cake here is going to be that keep in the bottom as well. So without once again really, you know, putting too much effort into this, it just seems like Beyond the Game from start to finish seems to have all the ideas, all the plans for them to really get ahead in this game. And now it's a 2-level lead. We take another look at that team fight.
And there was quite a lot going on here in this team fight. Muradin held the line for as long as he could, but the anti-healing from Deckard Cain prevented so much of that Malfurion healing.
Yeah.
And everyone grouped up trying to finish off Garrosh, let the ball lightning get maximum value. The BFG for good measure, preventing Malfurion from coming in to help Reina at all. Reina does a noble sacrifice trying to finish off Locktar, but it doesn't happen. The deck healing was too high.
Yeah, the conveyor belt actually there at the bottom also preventing Raynor from running away. And that is oftentimes one of the disadvantages of having a Raynor in your team, right? On this map in particular, because those conveyor belts, if you don't have a dash or a quick teleport, you can't really escape those just by running too easily.
Oh, great thundering execution. BFG comes down with a quick extract for the cat to try and get into the backline. It's a 1-for-1 as Thrower was finished off. Lockdown is tagging through as he can apply the armor. There's the biotic emitter coming in along with the undefender, and Genji trying to get another reset, but it's Malfurion that falls.
The synchrony of Sergeant Hammer and Cassia, it was just amazing to see how well able they were. How they were able to turn this around, basically. They're trying to steal this turret now as well. 19-17 Tetcher. It always seems like the one finds the Garrosh, but they invest so many resources, so many cooldowns to actually bring him down that they can seem to be able to finish the job that they started. Already, though, the bottom keep has been destroyed, so there's not really much for Beyond the Game to get value from. If that fight had taken place in the middle or in the top location for that protector, I think that would have been another keep for sure. But as it is, the distance was too long, too large for Beyond the Game to really make anything happen. Malfurion is going to be respawning here as well.
Beyond the Game have 3 catapults. They're moving around the area. Garrosh is on the way. They could go for keep, but it would be a 5 versus 5. They're half a level away from 20. They could try, yep, Monkey Spray coming in. Garrosh has arrived. They could absolutely try and 5v5 this for the core.
Yeah, and that is exactly what they were waiting for. They were waiting for the Garrosh. They were not wasting any protector health, any cooldowns whatsoever.
Nice.
Cleanse, Nature's Cleanse, beautifully done by ZJZ, but that is quite the onslaught. The protector next to minions, next to catapults is marching in.
Muradin tries to hold the backline. He's doing a good job. He's 2 versus 1-ing into the fray to get Deckard near to the rest of the team so he can try and heal up Lockdown, who's already dropped the turret in as the Protector is murderizing the core. It's down to 50%, but so is the core. Hyperion coming in for one last-ditch effort, but it is not enough. And BTG, they take game number 1.
Thatcher, this was not a perfect game that we've seen by BTG, but can we just say that it was a flawless game nonetheless? From start to finish, they were absolutely in control. If I recall correctly, they didn't lose a single fork. They did lose Garrosh every now and then, you know, because someone eventually had to die with all that onslaught, with all that focus fire and skill that the one unleashed. But if your team reigns supreme every single team fight because of it, that is the sacrifice 619 is willing to take every single time.
And it worked out in their favor. That was even in that fight in the bot lane that we were talking about, where BTG were able to, where Garrosh went down early and BTG were able to take control and turn it around in the 3-for-1.
Yeah.
RPG, the one used all of their items in that fight.
Yeah.
BTG used 3. They still had 1 healing pulse and 1 turret, and then went to get more. They immediately stole the opponent's camp, getting another turret on their side.
And I think from the One's perspective, they were probably estimating that, you know what, if we just take it to the late game, we're going to be okay because we have a Crash Lightning Thrall, we have Raynor, who also gains a significant late game power spike. But even that wasn't enough because stalling to the late game is fine and all, but if you lose crucial members, crucial buildings in the process, like that bottom keep, for example, like all those forts and towers in the meantime, then you're going to be so far behind that even the strongest of late game heroes like Thrall, like even a Nazebo in the mix, if they had one, they probably wouldn't have been able to, launch a little bit of a comeback with those.
Exactly. But either way, very nicely done by BTG. They take the 1-0 for the moment. That was a great slow roll. I do admire the patience for the one. But I think the roll is not a good enough reason, even Crash Lightning or not, to be that patient waiting for the late game. Eventually, you have to pull the trigger, and I think they waited too long for that.
And I think
too hard on a hero that didn't gain enough value.
For sure. Like, definitely. You could really see how that drafting mentality didn't work out. And I want to look at how they played this early game again. Genji, Meng, one of their most influential players, he was actually left alone in the bottom the entire time. He had to solo against Loktar on Irel, who, Irel doesn't even have to win this lane because by just keeping Genji occupied and centered in the bottom lane, they already have won. Because that means we're not going to have Genji ganks in the middle and the top. We're not going to have any of that deadly ganking pressure. And in my opinion, they should have just, despite the Crash Lightning plans, they should have then sent Thrall in the bottom. He not only would have been the better combatant to fight in Irel in a straight up 1v1, but they also would have had the Genji who can just contribute a lot more than just, sitting in the back idly throwing a chain lightning here and there.
And as such, we need to start seeing, it's weird. We've said this before, but we need to start seeing Hugo on another playmaking hero. Thrall is absolutely a playmaking hero, but if you're going to wait that long before you actually start trying to make those plays, then you're going to have trouble. So maybe bring in something like a Leoric, maybe get some Entombs in there, or something with a little bit more early game potential. A Blaze, for example, we've already seen that he's adjusted to that a little bit.
He could have played his Malthael even in that game against Irel.
He could. That might have been pretty acceptable. He might have done the solo lane pretty well. So yeah.
Also, the anti-healing would have been great against, the Decker Kane healing, the self-healing that warriors like Garrosh would have had with that Touch of Death anti-healing. So